So before I get to the episodes that I watched, I made a discovery on trying to watch the episodes that a couple of the episodes that I thought hadn't been there, and so I had found them elsewhere, um, they came up in between these two episodes. And so I started looking ahead, and Paramount Plus has the episodes that it has in a different order than Wikipedia has them, which whenever I do something like this, I use the Wikipedia thing as a master list to make sure that I get every episode, because first time I did something like this, it wasn't for YouTube stuff, it was with Pokemon, and we didn't have any streaming at that point, but we found them on YouTube. But I wanted to make sure we saw every single one, including the ones that hadn't necessarily aired in America. So it became and it has not served me wrong with Space Cases and Animorphs and Wishbone, to my knowledge anyway. But when I looked back, I saw that um, it lists as, let's see, 8, 9, and 10, for instance, The Tale of the Nightly Neighbors, The Tale of the Sorcerer's Apprentice, and The Tale of Jake and the Leprechaun. And 11 is The Tale of the Dark Music. So those aired originally not on October 3rd, October 10th, October 17th, and October 24th, but October 3rd, October 24th, October 17th, and October 10th. So the seemed like Paramount Plus had them in the right order, but Wikipedia does not. And so I've looked ahead now to season 2, because that's almost where I am. And The Tale of the Pinball Wizard on Paramount Plus is listed as a season 2, though it's listed as season 1 on Wikipedia, and episode 13. So and it aired on November 14th. But looking ahead, it looks like the Wikipedia original air dates on the list are, in order of when they happened. But it's just something I'm going to have to be on the lookout for, because I want to make sure. But I'm going to try to watch them in the order that Wikipedia has them listed, because I trust Wikipedia to have every single episode more than I trust Paramount Plus to have every single episode. And I want to, part of the whole point of doing this is that I finally watch every single episode of this TV show that I have in the past loved. So that's 3 minutes of non sequitur. Well, sequitur. 3 minutes of something other than the point of the video, which is The Tale of the Dark Music and The Tale of the Prom Queen. So The Tale of the Dark Music finally asks the question, are you afraid of the dark? It opens with Frank gets very mad at Eric because Frank lost his flashlight, or it didn't work, and so he wanted to walk with Eric, who has a working flashlight, and Eric apparently left him alone in the woods, and it turns out Frank is afraid of the dark, which, as one of the others, I forget which one it was, I haven't learned her name, she says, I get scared in the dark sometimes too, which is the most PBS after-school special line that has been in this show so far. Just kind of it's okay to be, like, speaking to the kids watching. It's okay to be afraid of the dark. Which is not that there's anything wrong with that. It stuck out in this show that can be quite unsettling and cause fear of the dark. But anyway, it's Eric's turn to tell the story, and it involves being afraid of the dark. The kid, Andy, the main kid, is, his family's on hard times, but his mom's uncle left her a nice house for them to move into, so they moved to the neighborhood, to a new neighborhood, out of an apartment, I think. They had a small apartment. He's got a little sister. Let's see if I wrote down her name somewhere. I probably did, and I'll find it eventually. I want to say it's Christina. And, of course, he is welcomed to the neighborhood by a bully with long hair and black clothes and a rock and roll soundtrack. Now we find out that this bully is bullied by his father, who looks like Beetlejuice before he died. He's wearing black and white striped trousers and he's got long, unruly hair. This guy has no shirt, unlike Beetlejuice, but it looked like the bully's dad was Beetlejuice. So I thought we were going to end up with a Nelson Muntz type of bully storyline where the point is he bullies because he's bullied, and that maybe he and Andy were going to reconcile their differences by the end. But he also does some pretty terrible things to Andy, like throwing his bike in front of a truck. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. In the house, in the basement, Andy finds an old radio and starts fiddling with it, turns on some music, and then this wooden door across from the radio the handle starts jiggling, and the door opens eventually, and glowing red eyes are seen coming out through the door, trying to get Andy to come in, or something like that. And I think that it's his mom. The power in the basement, the electricity in the basement is a little confusing in this one, because it looks like it's controlled from outside the basement door, and his mom turns off the power, the radio turns off, and I think that saves Andy, so to speak. But sometimes it seems like there's power in the basement even though the switch outside the basement door, like it's dark in the basement, but a radio still works. Stuff like that happens. It's a little inconsistent. I wasn't a huge fan of this episode, or this story. And I should mention that when we find out that the bully is bullied by his dad because he's scrubbing the stone steps that lead up to their house, which is right next door to Andy's house. At one point, okay, so the first encounter is just the bully randomly walks up to Andy and says, "Welcome to the neighborhood, I'm the bully," essentially. He doesn't say that specifically, but that's essentially it. The second encounter with the bully, Andy's got a paper route, and he throws the paper, it knocks against the door, and then knocks over the bucket, and then splashes the bully, and the bully then chases him, and he runs into the basement because the front door is locked. For some reason, he doesn't have a key. He runs into the basement through the, I guess, those those wooden doors, like in The Wizard of Oz, I guess, and then locks it. And then he's in the basement again, and the radio. He turns on the radio, and oh no! And this time around, his little sister spooks him. So that's not a encounter with the whatever's in the thing, which it reminded me of It. Whatever's in the thing, it reminded me of It because it has a different shape every time it comes after him. One time it comes after him looking like a baby doll. Another time it looks like a carnival barker. So he asks in a scene before his next encounter in the basement, what was Uncle Niles like? And his mother says, nobody knows. He never left the house, but somehow got very rich. That is Uncle Niles' story, which is, of course, the dream. Uncle Niles was living the dream. And so she then asks Andy, she's been working in the fireplace, so she asks Andy to go down and put the clothes from the washer into the dryer. And for some reason, every time they go down into the basement, he has to turn on the radio. Why can't he just work in silence, is what I was wondering. Turns on the radio. This is when he meets the doll, who invites him, and he almost takes the doll's hand and goes into the dark room, which, when his mom investigates after the first thing, she calls it a root cellar, and it's just this big stone room behind a wooden door. But that's in the light without music playing. I think the dark music is just any music, because it sounds like any music will, or maybe it's the music that the first radio was playing, but it sounds like any music will inspire the spirit. But yeah, it seems like a Pennywise the Dancing Clown monster. So that's Andy figures out the music connection eventually, probably on the Carnival Barker one, and then he sets a trap. After the bully throws his bike in front of the truck, he sets a trap, puts big speakers in the basement, hooks them up to the radio, and he, let's see, the bully's scrubbing the stone steps, and he wraps a newspaper around a block of wood and throws it at the bully, thereby becoming a bully himself, and then traps the bully in the basement, turns on the music, and when he goes down into the basement, the bully is not there, but there's a nice shiny bike, and the creature in the thing says, "I'll give you anything you want. All you have to do is feed me." So again, it's it. Kind of. Also, Feed Me it's a little bit Little Shop of Horrors. I think there's a Demon Plant episode somewhere along the lines. But anyway, that's that episode. And Eric, the storyteller, then gets what's coming to him because Frank has left with his flashlight, and everyone else leaves. And he says, "I'll just wait here in the dark until Frank comes back with a flashlight." Doesn't leave with any of them. Yeah, it's not my favorite episode. I liked The Tale of the Prom Queen better. Now, The Tale of the Prom Queen is a note on the Wikipedia piece that says, loosely based on Resurrection Mary. So I was kind of hoping for another Monkey's Paw thing where it's a out of copyright ghost story that I could read, but it's a Chicago area ghost story of the vanishing hitchhiker type, where drivers pick up a hitchhiker and then the hitchhiker disappears either out of the moving vehicle or the hitchhiker asks to be released at a weird place and then disappears. Kind of the opening of The Woman in White. And in this case, it takes place, or the urban legend is based around Resurrection Cemetery in Justice, Illinois, a few miles southwest of Chicago. Since the 1930s, it says, several men driving northeast along Archer Avenue between the Willowbrook Ballroom and Resurrection Cemetery, the Matrix Resurrection Cemetery, have reported picking up a young female hitchhiker. She's usually dressed as though she's been to a dance. She's dressed nicely, she's got blonde hair and blue eyes, they say, and then they let her out near Resurrection Cemetery, or she just disappears. And the legend says that Mary had spent the evening dancing with a boyfriend at the O. Henry Ballroom, now the Willowbrook Ballroom, and they got into a fight and she stormed out, and then as she was walking on Archer Avenue, she was struck and killed by a hit-and-run driver who fled the scene, never to be identified, and that she was then buried in Resurrection Cemetery, wearing her dancing dress and matching dancing shoes. There are a couple potential historical Marys, but including one Anna Maria Norcus, something like that, who died in 1927 in an automobile accident while on her way home from the O. Henry Ballroom, and her name, I guess her nickname or middle name, is a variation of Mary or Maria, and that seems the most likely, according to Chicago author Ursula Bielski. But anyway, that is the basis of this Are You Afraid of the Dark episode. Not a definitive story with text that I can read to the computer and include as a supplemental video for this video, but just a ghost story out of Chicago, which was interesting to learn about, even if it's not a piece of fiction. Well, it probably is mostly a piece of fiction, if it's a ghost story. Anyway, the episode opens with a ghostly bride-type figure wandering through the woods toward the Midnight Society gathering place, which freaks out the Midnight Society very nicely, and then they figure out it's Kristen in disguise because it goes along with her story, The Tale of the Prom Queen, based on Resurrection Mary. She stays in character as she tells the story. She's one of the more interesting of the Midnight Society people, just based on this, but also some of the other things she's done. So the story starts in a cemetery, and we follow the character Dee Dee just walking through the cemetery, looking for, I think she's looking for the prom queen's, I don't know if there's, well, she knows there's a prom queen. She doesn't know the name yet, I don't think, at this point in the episode. She's looking for the prom queen's grave. and she is encountered by she encounters Greg and Jamp. Jamp is the name, at least that's what it sounded like, just like Ouija. Greg and Jamp. Greg is a more serious type of guy, but they're both the kind of guys who walk around cemeteries. And Jamp doesn't know that Night of the Living Dead is not about ghosts, but zombies. He literally says, she says, "You're not ghosts," and he says, "We might be ghosts. Haven't you ever seen Night of the Living Dead, which is about zombies?" He had very Armie Hammer. The actor reminded me of Armie Hammer in the delivery. Let's see. So she tells the story to the guys about the prom date hit by a car in the fog, and they search for the grave, but they don't find it. But they decide they don't want to give up on it, so they go to the library to search for newspaper coverage. They find Judy Larson was the name of the girl who, walking back from the prom, got hit by a car, and that her boyfriend then drove. He died too. He drove off of a bridge. Not knowing that he was supposed to be looking for her, drove off of a bridge, I think, again because of the fog, but they both died in this version. And they're looking through microfiche at the library, and the librarian arrives to offer them tea, and they all freak out because it was all quiet, and then suddenly there was a person in jingling. That sort of thing happens in like libraries where the librarians. Then in movies and TV it happens where they offer tea, the kindly old librarian ladies. That doesn't seem like it doesn't seem realistic, but they had to have a jump scare there, I guess. So Ricky is the name of the guy who never picked her up. So they're unraveling this mystery. So Dee Dee wants to have a seance in a boat at the place where, because they don't know where the prom queen was hit, but they know the bridge that the car went off of, and apparently is still there. I guess they didn't take the car out of the water. I wasn't clear on that. But they take a motorboat out to that spot, and they have the seance on the motorboat, and then it starts to sound like there's a car revving its engine under the water. Something's bubbling up, and they motor the boat to the side of the creek, and they get out, and they then don't see anything, but they are very freaked out. I guess they realize that Ricky was supposed to pick Judy up near the cemetery, but she got killed, and he got killed before that could happen. Jumping out to the Midnight Society, Kristen takes off the corsage and tosses it on the fire in a nicely dramatic little bit of stagecraft, or not stagecraft, but theatricality to the story. And then we're back in the story. The kids find Judy's grave, finally, at the cemetery because they know the name they're looking for. And they see that it is the anniversary of when it happened. And then Greg, he's not as much into it. He's very interested in Dee Dee, but he's not very interested in pursuing the ghost thing. He's a little scared. Then when a ghost in a white cloak arrives, a ghost that casts a shadow, Greg goes after it and then pulls down the cloak because he's pretty sure it can't be a real ghost, and it turns out it is Chuck, who was hired by Jamp to be a ghost at this time. But now we see fog rolling over the road, and we see a car seemingly from the 50s slowly pulling around. And I had guessed this. It turns out Dee Dee is the ghost, and she couldn't leave the cemetery unescorted, and therefore couldn't solve the mystery if she couldn't leave the cemetery. But these guys, they seemed like ghost hunters, and she used them to she used them to solve the mystery, which enabled her to do the seance to reawaken Ricky, I guess, and then they go back to the cemetery, and he was finally able to pick her up. I liked this one better than the other one, and it also gave me the idea that what I should say at the end of these videos is pleasant dreams, everyone.